I'd like you to welcome Dr. Rosemary Stanton. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, and thank you to the interpreters. You're very clever. I'm not quite sure what you were saying, but I hope it was correct. Thank you for inviting me too. For many years I lived just up the road at Beecroft, so I haven't been back to Eastwood. I now live in the country and I haven't been back here for some years. So I'm old enough to have retired, but I haven't done that yet. And I'm still wandering around telling people the sorts of foods that will keep them healthy as they grow old, as I grow older too. So I thought today, in talking about how do you look after yourself as you grow older, I would start with looking at the body, and I'll start at the head with the brain. What do you eat for your brain? What do you eat for your eyes? Then we'll go down and look at the heart and things in here, and then we'll look at the bones. So we'll quickly run through, and you'll see at the end that pretty well the things that are good for one bit are good for the other bit, so it becomes much simpler. If we start off with the brain, the most important thing for the brain is that you eat regularly and you don't skip meals, and you don't follow one of those fad diets that tell you not to eat any carbohydrates. I think many people in the audience are used to eating rice, and it's a good thing. So a tick for rice. You need some good sort of carbohydrate because that provides glucose, which is the fuel for the brain. So that's important. The other thing that's important for the brain is to eat some seafood. Fish, mussels, prawns, any kind of seafood has a type of fat that is very important for the brain and seems to be very important before we're born and as we get older. Has its greatest importance. So seafood is very important. If you don't eat seafood, you can get some similar benefits from eating walnuts and linseeds, sometimes called flax seeds. But if you can manage to eat some seafood, which I see just across the way here, that's obviously an advantage. Our eyes deteriorate as we grow older, and often glasses will help. But our diet is also important for the eyes, and there are some natural pigments, colours, that occur in foods which are very valuable for the eyes. Many of us were told to eat carrots so we could see in the dark, but in fact it's probably more important to eat spinach so that you can see when you get older. And the things that are important for eyes come in fruits and vegetables. And Asian vegetables are particularly rich. So the Asian vegetables are very good, and so are eggs. And it is the yolk of the egg that is especially important. So when people follow silly diets and won't eat eggs, I think, what about your eyes? So for eyes we need plenty of fruits and vegetables and eggs. The heart, when we come to the heart right in the middle, which has got to keep pumping throughout life, it's very important that you exercise your heart by exercising your body. And keeping physically active is probably the most important thing for the heart. It's also important not to get too fat. And when we look at what we're eating for the heart, we come up with fish is good, eating the right kind of fat is good, and that fat should come in the form of oil rather than a solid fat. Olive oil is the oil that I've spent much of my life studying. I've spent my life studying Mediterranean diets more than Asian diets, though we do have Asian diet pyramids that we've worked on as well. But the olive oil is particularly good, but so is sesame oil or grapeseed oil or any oil as long as it's a liquid oil. If the oil is solid, bad. If it's liquid, it's good. So liquid oils are good. Nuts are very good for the heart. Any kind of nuts. Cashews, peanuts, pistachios, hazelnuts, walnuts, any kind of nut. The nuts contain a particular sort of protein which is very valuable for keeping the heart rhythm even as we grow older. You don't need a lot of nuts, just the amount of a little palmful of nuts, a few nuts is very good for your heart. Avocado is also very good for the heart, so that has the right kind of fat. Fruits and vegetables are going to come up with every bit of the body I talk about as being very important. Fish fats, also very good for the heart. Again, they keep the heart rhythm even, and for anyone who's had a heart attack, fish seems to be even more important. So very important to have fish. And when I say fish, if you want to have mussels or squid or prawns or any other sort of seafood, that's absolutely fine. The other thing that's very important for your heart concerns blood pressure. And this relates the heart back to the brain. Because if your blood pressure goes up, it can cause a stroke, which means that the blood supply that goes up to your brain is cut, and that's a problem. And the major problem there is having too much salt in the diet. And for those people who come from various parts of Asia, you have a great problem, because that is your biggest health problem, that you've always had a lot of salted foods, whether it's fish sauce or soy sauce. They're very salty. And so when we look at what's their biggest health problem in most parts of Asia, it is stroke from the high salt diet. So if you can use a reduced salt soy sauce and as little as possible, that is ideal. So for your heart, you need fruit and vegetables, you need the right kind of fats, oils, nuts, avocado. You need fish or seafood, and not too much salt. That's really important. And of course, walking or some other exercise is really important. Okay, let's move from the heart and have your intestine, which when you swallow food, it goes down. Your stomach is about there, and then you've got meters and meters, about 10 meters of intestine all curled around inside you. To keep that healthy, you need plenty of fibre. And fibre comes from fruit and vegetables again. I make no apologies, fruit and vegetables are going to come up for every bit of the body we look at. But the fruit and vegetables are important to keep your intestine healthy. But so are things like whole grain products. Now, whole grain products might be whole grain bread, rolled oats, any sort of rice. Brown rice is actually better than white rice, which I know isn't always so popular, but it is a bit better. And if we look at some of the things like couscous, quinoa, spelt Q-U-I-N-O-A, is a very ancient grain, which is the most nutritious of all grains, and you can now buy it in the supermarket. So it's now being grown in Australia. It comes from South America. So all of those grains are really important for your intestine. You've also got a little thing in there called the pancreas, and the pancreas produces insulin. And insulin takes the sugar out of your blood, out of your food and into the blood, and then takes it to all of the different parts of the body to provide energy. So to keep that healthy, you actually don't want to eat too much sugar. A little bit of sugar is fine, but just not too much. And it's also important that we eat better carbohydrates to keep the pancreas healthy. So the less refined ones, those whole grains again. The liver, there's only one big problem for the liver for most people, and that's too much alcohol. So only 1 to 2 alcoholic drinks a day, 1 for women, 2 for men. And a standard drink is actually quite small, not very big. So a small glass is a good idea. The kidneys. Kidneys have to get rid of all of the waste that we take in. And if you are taking any kind of prescription medication or other medication, the kidneys have to get rid of the leftovers. So you need to keep your kidneys healthy. And the important thing there is to drink enough fluid, and that can be water, tea. Tea is a very healthy thing to be drinking. Coffee is fine as long as you don't have more than about 4 cups a day. I'm afraid I can only have 1 cup a day, and after that I start to get shaky. But tea and coffee are fine, water is fine. And you should try and remember, think, am I thirsty? Because very often, when we're thirsty, we forget about it. And particularly as people get older, they don't drink enough. So it's not true that if you're thirsty, you're dehydrated. That's a myth. But you should remember that thirst is important to satisfy as hunger is. So drinking enough is important. And it doesn't all have to be water. And I'm not going to stand here and tell you all have to have 8 glasses a day, because for some of you who are quite small, 8 glasses would be much too much, and for anybody who's very active it wouldn't be enough. So everybody needs a different amount, but you need to make sure that there's water going through your body and that what comes out of the body is a fairly clear colour, so that your urine needs to be clear, not yellow. If it's yellow, you're not drinking enough. Okay, men, you have a special gland, the prostate gland, that is quite related to diet. What you need to do for the health of your prostate gland is avoid being too fat, as the number one thing. And secondly, you need to eat tomatoes. Tomatoes contain a substance called lycopene, which is a pigment that is very important for the health of the prostate gland. So, I mean, all you've got to do is not get too fat, because that blocks off blood supply, and you get clogged arteries going to that part of the body, is the same as you get clogged arteries going to the heart, and you need to eat tomatoes. So, the tomatoes can be cooked, can be in a sauce, not tomato sauce that you buy that people stick on their meat pies, but the sort of tomato sauce you have with pasta. Or just cook some tomatoes or just eat them raw, any sort of tomatoes. Okay, let's get down to the bones. Bones I'm always interested in. Somebody like me, who's fairly skinny, has a problem with bones. The one good thing about being fat is that it keeps your bones strong. So if you're like me and you're a bit skinny, you need to carry things or do exercises. Now, I'm not one to go to a gym. I live in the country and I like to go walking. I carry the wood and carry things. But if you are thin, you need to make sure that your life includes some method that you actually carry stuff. So men, if you see a large woman carrying a bag, you can leave her, you can carry it for her and you can be a gentleman. But if the woman is thin and she's carrying her bag, you should leave her to carry it herself. The other things that are important for bones is that you need calcium. And you can get calcium from tofu, you can get it from dairy products, soy products, almonds, and very tiny fish. And in many parts of Asia, people eat the whole fish, which you would know better than I do, and they eat the shells of the prawns, and they're particularly rich sources of calcium. So you don't need to have dairy products for calcium, though they happen to be a good source, but you do need some specific source of calcium. Almonds, the nuts, are also a good source of calcium. The other thing you need is a bit of sun to give you vitamin D. Many old people don't expose any of their skin to sunlight, and that's bad. Now, we don't want too much sun, and we don't want it at this time of the day, because that's going to increase your risk of skin cancers. But before 10 or 11 o'clock in the morning and after 3 o'clock in the afternoon, you should try to be outside for at least 15 minutes with at least your arms exposed. So if we were outside in the sun for 15 minutes a day with our arms exposed, we would get enough vitamin D. And if you don't have enough vitamin D, your bones become very weak, because you can't absorb calcium without vitamin D. Lots of things in the body all work together. Fruit and vegetables are also important for bone health. The nutrients they contain, the magnesium and a whole range of other things are really important for your bones. So for bones, you need some exercise. You need to be not too thin, and if you are thin, then you've got to carry stuff. You need some calcium, you need some vitamin D, and you need fruit and vegetables. So, putting that all together, so we look at the entire body, having a healthy diet is really quite important. And it's somewhat difficult in Australia because many people do not eat healthily. We thank the people who've come to Australia from other countries because they've brought some very good food habits, particularly the habit of eating vegetables. Now, I get very annoyed if I go to a restaurant, an Australian restaurant, and I have to pay extra for my vegetables. Vegetables should be part of every meal. They are in Mediterranean countries, they are in Asian countries, and they used to be in Australia. Unfortunately, they're disappearing. So we need to eat more vegetables and more fruits. We need to look after the diet that we're having, and basically we need to be sure that we don't eat too many junk food.